There are 4 solutions to the equation, and we want to find all 4 solutions. So there's 2 primary ways of solving this. The first one I'm going to use is substitution method, or U substitution. And you can look at this equation, you can say it's quadratic in form. It's not a quadratic because it's raised to the 4th power, not a squared power, but it's in form. Because look at this, if you have ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0, the standard form. You have the linear term here. If you take and square that, if you take your x term here and square it, you're going to get x squared, which is what you've got here. So if you look up here, if you take your x squared and squared, you get x to the 4th. So it is quadratic in form. So we can solve it like a quadratic equation. First way to do this is through U substitution. You take the middle term here, you say, let's say u is equal to x squared. You can call this anything you want. But when you get into calculus, you'll have U substitution, so we're just going to use U to kind of stay consistent with your calculus class. So if u is equal to x squared, what happens when we have u is equal to x squared and we square both sides? Square, square. Well, this is u to the first. Exponents raised, so 2 times 1 is u squared. 2 times 2 is 4, would be x to the 4th. So now we can come up here and we can say, oh, there's x to the 4th. We can call it u squared. U squared minus 6. Well, we have x squared. X to the squared is the same thing as u. Minus 27 is equal to 0. Now it looks like any other quadratic equation we've been solving all along here. So let's just go ahead and solve this. U and u. Well, this is negative and this is negative, so we know one of them is going to be negative and one of them has to be positive, because a negative times a positive gives us the negative there. In order to have a negative times a positive and get a negative here, the negative is going to have to be the larger of the two. So 27 factors, 27 is what, 3 and 9? 3 and 9. So 9 has to be negative and 3. So let's check this. This gives us negative 9u. Plus 3u gives us negative 6u, so that checks. So that's our factors. Get rid of those. Okay, so now we go ahead and solve this. U is equal to, I'll go ahead and do each step here for you. U minus 9 is equal to 0. U plus 3 is equal to 0. U is equal to 9, and u is equal to negative 3. Well, that's what u is equal to, but we want to find out what x is equal to. Well, we know u is equal to x squared. So if u is equal to x squared, so we're just substituting x squared. X squared is equal to 9, and x squared is equal to negative 3. Take the square root of both sides, and we get x is equal to plus or minus 3 here. And take the square root of both sides here, we get x is equal to plus or minus the square root of negative 3. Well, we know we can break that down into that same thing as negative 1 times 3. Which is equal, well, negative 1 is the same thing as I squared, so I squared times 3, I squared, and that's equal to the square root of 3 times the square root of I squared, which is equal to the square root of 3 times I. So plus or minus, those are all plus or minus, plus or minus, plus or minus. So the 4 solutions is plus or minus 3 and plus or minus 3 times I, square root of 3 times I. So that's one way of solving it by U substitution. A second method we could use here is rewrite the problem here. We have x to the 4th minus 6x squared minus 27 is equal to 0. Well, you can look at this. Once again, you identify that, yes, it's in quadratic in form. And if you want, you can jump right into factoring this. You can look at this. What's the factors of x to the 4th? Well, x to the 4th is x squared and x squared. So this would be x squared times x squared will give us x to the 4th. And what's the factors of 27? Like we said before, is 3 and 9. So let's say minus 9 plus 3. So we have x squared minus 9 is equal to 0. X squared plus 3 is equal to 0. So x squared is equal to 9. X squared is equal to negative 3. X is equal to plus or minus 3, and as we discussed above, x is equal to plus or minus square root of 3i. So there, once again, you get the same solutions. A little bit quicker if you can see that you can just say x squared times x squared. If not, go ahead and use the use substitution, and either method is fine.